Hello, welcome to another Snake Solid video. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, son of a bitch. Snake Solid is making another Persona 3 Reload video, but I thought that, I considered that maybe I should make varied content, but then I also thought, this is like the only game where I've been excited enough with it to continue to cover the news on it, so it's my YouTube channel. I can do whatever I want. When I feel like I want to move on to a different topic, I will. Sorry if it's irritating you. Things just happen when one of your favorite games of all time gets announced for a remake, as you do. Anyways, I'm not the first one to cover this, but there's this interview that I wanted to cover and just kind of read through and give my opinion on it. It's just a small interview about the remake and stuff, so I thought it would be fun, and I'll show the interview text as I read through it, but I'll also link the article in the video's description if you want to go down and watch it or read it yourself instead of hearing me read through it. Another thing is that they also released new footage for the remake from IGN. Unfortunately, IGN is still relevant, but I have probably put it in the background of this video because it's pretty cool. I really like the camera movements and stuff that they do, as well as the way that the new areas look. It looks fantastic. And it just gets me really excited, especially since the atmosphere doesn't look as overly bright as it did in regular Persona 3, which isn't the worst thing. I think it kind of works a little bit. But anyways, with that out of the way, I'm going to read this interview, but also give my opinion on things throughout the way, if I have anything to say. Thank you for your time today. Firstly, please tell us about the history of Persona 3 Reload, P3R. Firstly, we know that many people have wanted a remake. This reached us in many ways, including the survey that Atlas conducts every year. It's always been one of the top titles that people would like to have seen remade. It was also an important project for us on the development side, and something that we couldn't start half-heartedly. The idea has been around for quite some time. However, development did not progress until the latter half of 2019. That was after the release of Persona 5 Royal, P5R, on the PS4. Yes, quite a few people started working on it around the end of P5R's development. Then after P5R was completed, almost all of them transitioned to development on P3R. P Studio is working with a new game engine, and it will also be the first project on this scale to be released worldwide simultaneously. In that sense, it was both a remake of an important work which made the Persona series what it is today, and a new challenge for the development of the Persona series in the future. Please tell us what kind of work P3R is. This is a full remake of the original Persona 3, released in 2006 for the PS2. Elements such as the worldview, story, and characters are unchanged from the original version. However, the game will be remade, taking into account modern design and functionality so that it can be enjoyed by the standards of a current Persona game. Putting it simply, this is a remake that aims to allow players to experience P3 in a similar way to P5. Persona 5 is a title that has become the standard for how the games play for current Persona fans. We know this from surveys and other sources, but also because P5 is a title which has expanded the popularity of the Persona series worldwide, so both for domestic and overseas fans. I think that players who have been with the series from the start are also used to Persona 5 gameplay as the standard. When they go back to play Persona 3 for the first time in a while, they might feel that it's more difficult to play. So I wonder if the players wanting for a remake are coming from this position as well. Yes, that's true. The original game was released around 17 years ago, and looking at the series, we went from Persona 3 to Persona 5, and many spin-off games were released. With the systems and playability being refined, those who have played the series as it progressed will also feel that difficulty when returning to past works. Of course, the same is true for those fans who started with Persona 5. There are a lot of Persona fans who have been around for a long time, and of course, we have to respect the experience that they remember. However, as Yamaguchi said earlier, I thought we could attain this by not changing the worldview, story, and character elements. So from what I'm reading here, it just sounds like they want to change things like gameplay, not necessarily story stuff, which I can get behind pretty well. Persona 3's main problem for me was always usually the gameplay, because I just straight up think Persona 3 has the best story in the entire series. In my opinion. That's my humble opinion. Feel free to disagree in the comments. But I think them focusing on refining the gameplay is the better option here, because that's honestly what needed the most work from the original. For the aspects that have been remade, what exactly has changed? Firstly, the easiest to understand part is the physical health system. It was part of what made the original Persona 3 unique, but it was also removed in subsequent titles. Additionally, it doesn't mesh well with the calendar system, which became a staple of the modern Persona series. It's the system that restricts your actions when tired or sick, right? It was a core part of the game's progression, but the randomness of this element sometimes made it difficult to progress as you wanted. Yes, in the current Persona titles, I think the basic way to enjoy the game is to schedule and plan what to do each day and time, but the physical health system creates additional stress for that playstyle. Due to its randomness, it is harder for the player to manage their time, and when they get fatigued or sick, they can't take the actions they originally wanted to. Even during battles, the randomness affected the choice the player could make, such as having negative effects on status, or having allies leave on their own in the middle of the dungeon experience. The random nature of the system removed the joy from a player's decision making. The way we thought about the dungeon exploration was different in Persona 3 compared to now. At the time, it was designed with the assumption that you would slowly climb over several days, so the fatigue system was one of the elements that made you go home. I actually didn't really mind the physical health system. I know that a lot of people despise it, and this isn't me saying that it should come back 100%, definitely not. But I never really understood real point of it, I guess. I never really thought of it. I just thought that it was the way they forced you to go back instead of how P4 did it, whereas in P4 and P5 you can keep going for as long as you have the SP and HP to spare if you really wanted to, which I do think is the better focus, but I just guess I never really thought of why the system was like that to begin with. I see, as the series has progressed and the modern way of playing it is to complete the dungeon in as few days as possible and then spend the rest of the time on social links and other activities. It's like aiming to max out all social links on a first playthrough. Maxing out all social links in one playthrough is not as hard as it was in the original version. It is about the same as doing so in Persona 5. It's not easy, but it's achievable with good time management. Social links are one of the things that has changed from the original to the present. At the time, the games weren't designed for you to complete all social links in one playthrough. I was really surprised when players achieved this through their tireless efforts. It seems that there are none of the additional elements from Persona 3 FES or Persona 3 Portable because it is standard Persona 3. However, new episodes are being added to the main story and social links. Yes, the scenarios which were in the original, such as the main story and social links, are basically the same. There is no Persona 3 FES post-story content or Persona 3 Portable female protagonist, but that doesn't mean there aren't elements from those two titles. In addition, there are new scenarios which delve deeper into the world and characters in other ways. For example, there were no social links for the male party members in the original game, so unlike male party members in Persona 4 and 5, they weren't able to build as much of a relationship or interact with the main character. Since social links remain the same as in the original, we can't give them new ones. However, we will prepare content which shows their character and their relationships with the main character in a different way. I can't talk about the specifics yet, but I hope you look forward to it. So with them saying that there's no post-FES story content, I think that's pretty reasonable. No, the answer sucks, but it sounds like that they're planning on keeping additional story things they added in the answer because they felt the need to specify post story. So that must mean that we're going to still have Elizabeth and I guess as well as several other stuff that I can't really say because that would be spoilers for 3, which I'm fine with personally. Everybody is like going like, oh no, where's the answer, Atlas? But like, look, I like the answer, but I could tell you this. Where were all these, where were all these people that were fans of the answer back when I first played it? Back when I first played it and was exposed to the answer, if I said that I liked the answer, I was called stupid, okay? So just asking, where were you guys who liked the answer beforehand? I also want you to pay attention to the voice acting. I think voice acting is one of the highest expectations of fans for the modern Persona series. Everything has been newly recorded and the volume has been increased considerably within the story and event scenes. For example, in the social links in the series so far, there are many cases where they are only partially voiced. However, in Persona 3 Reload, all rank-up events are fully voiced, even though I had seen these events many times prior to development. When they are fully voiced, I feel they resonate more deeply emotionally. I think that even those who have played the game before will be able to experience the scenario in a new way. It seems then that the text and voice work must have significantly increased then. Yes, it was the largest amount of voice work in the series. The Persona series has already a high playtime, but if you listen to the voices throughout the game, I think you'll be able to enjoy it to its fullest. I'm kind of mixed on the entire voice cast being replaced, personally. It sounds like they wanted to do that because they want to add a lot more story content, or extra story content in this, as well as wanting to add full voice acting to the social links, which I don't have a problem with. I actually think that would make the game a lot easier to play through, but I do really like the old voice actors, but as said in my previous video, and I'll say it again, after getting over the initial disappointment of not having the characters sound exactly how they used to be, I figured that it'd be unfair not to give the new voice cast a shot, right? And especially since it sounds like we're getting a lot more voice acting, I think that's a good trade-off, personally. I would like to know about dungeon exploration and battles, but first, what has changed with Tartarus? It's a dungeon with over 250 floors, each randomly generated every time you enter, and it's directly connected to the game's world and story. However, the scenery doesn't change much, and the progression tends to be monotonous. I wonder how this was tackled when creating the remake. It was the first thing that came up to mind as a point for improvement when starting the work on the remake, and it was something which had a lot of discussions about. Of course, we were aware of what the fans felt, as you said. However, Tartarus is closely tied to the world and story, so we couldn't change the structure of the dungeon. That's right. While it can become monotonous, part of the appeal of P3 is the sense of emptiness as you gradually ascend Tartarus during the gloomy dark hour. Was it hard to reconstruct it while preserving this atmosphere? Yes. For example, we couldn't create a fixed dungeon like in Persona 5 with various gimmicks by reducing the number of floors, so while staying faithful to the original, we created a dungeon which can be enjoyed without getting bored by adding numerous small elements. One example is the conversations between allies. At regular intervals, there's unique dialogue that can only be heard in the dungeon. Additionally, objects which can be destroyed and the background movement have been added. These minor interactive elements of visual changes may seem insignificant, but they can greatly make the gameplay feel more engaging and prevent it from becoming tedious. Tartarus has been improved thanks to the expressive power of the Unreal Engine. We were able to faithfully adapt Tartarus into a three-dimensional widescreen format when capturing the essence of the original, but with a lot of variety, it is quite hard to convey with screenshots. But the use of various lighting effects, the visuals create an immersive experience, preventing it from becoming monotonous. The character models and animations have also changed quite a bit from the original. There has been a change in expression and direction due to the change in head and body proportions. When compared to the original, the balance between the stylish and comical will feel closer to the former. Because of this change away from the deformed models, it is harder to express the characters performing certain actions like falling on their butts during battle, but as the cool and comical aspect is important to P3, we made sure to keep that aspect of it. Another element I'm curious about, just like Tartarus, is the battle system. Firstly, the player can give direct commands to the party members, right? Also, has the AI been able to be improved in this day and age? The player can give direct commands, which has been the standard since Persona 4. There is also an option where the players can set a general direction and let party members fight automatically, so please think of it as a part of the gameplay style the Persona series is known for today. I would also like to ask about skills during combat. For example, will the light and darkness elements have skills added in P5 which deal damage in addition to instant death? I cannot talk about the specifics yet, but for P3R, we are making adjustments to the elements including skills so that the party members can all play an active role as equally as possible. Battles are tailored to fit each character's individuality, so please look forward to more of that in the future. So it sounds like they want to add a lot more life to Tartarus, I guess you could say. I know they just said it's like lifeless, but it sounds like they want to add like interactable, breakable objects and stuff like that, and just things to make the atmosphere feel more like it's there. And I do like the camera, the way the camera is situated in the trailer, so that'll make Tartarus feel a lot more dangerous and less, less like a bunch of boxes floating in a void like it does in the original, which I'm a fan of, actually. I think Tartarus needs to be made more scary. But I do think it's a little bit foolish to say that there's nowhere that they can actually add any type of extra dungeons like in Persona 5. They really easily could like rearrange or change some of the full moon events to be similar to that. Like they could definitely make like the train more interesting or the Love Hotel incident more interesting. Well, I mean the Love Hotel incident probably is the closest we have to like a full blown out like dungeon with gimmicks, but you get what I'm saying. I just think that saying that there's nowhere that they can add that is a little bit foolish, but that's just my opinion. I've been asking a lot of questions, but what was the process to change and refine aspects from the original game? Firstly, we looked at the design of the original version to highlight elements that might have been overlooked compared to the modern Persona series, or elements that might not work today. We then discussed revising these parts with the development team and meticulously took into account things which bothered players when playing the game in the past. I'm interested in gathering feedback from the players who have played the game before. Yamaguchi is one of them, but over half of the P3R development team were not game developers at the time but were exposed to P3 as players, so they offer a different perspective to that of those involved in development at the time, so they can see the strengths and weak points that dissatisfied them in the original Persona 3. I see, it must have been difficult since fans often have their own ideal image of each Persona game. I imagine it was difficult to consolidate those differing opinions. Yes, development members who were players at the time of the original release are strongly passionate about the game, just like the fans. As the director, I looked at the direction of the remake while striking a balance, but every person has their own preference and focal areas. We had moments of debate like, if you get rid of this part, it won't be Persona 3 anymore, or no, if we tone this down and do it this way, it will still capture the essence of Persona 3. I would watch those lively discussions and say, you can argue all you want, but please come to a conclusion by next week. I said it jokingly, but I think this debate led to the creation of a really high-quality remake. Each and every one of us respected the original work, and while cherishing our feelings of playing, we gave our opinions as developers working on the game production. I do like to hear that it sounds like a lot of people on the development team were people that played Persona 3 back when they were in their teenage or children years, but like, I do hope that they don't release the game with too much bloating or too much extra things. I just really think that, they should try to avoid that, but also not cut a whole lot of content. But it does sound like the people behind the remake genuinely do want to make it as faithful to the original as possible. So I think that's something this makes me have higher hopes for the remake, I guess, now that I know that. While I wanted Persona 3 to be easy to play as Persona 5, I was selfishly hoping that it would retain the oppressiveness and daringness of the original. Listening to the development team, it feels like there wasn't anything to worry about. We definitely considered that. Even after becoming a developer, I felt Persona 3's appeal was in its rough edges. While the roughness needs to be polished in order to create a game that people want to play now, those rough edges are important to the essence of the game, so it's important that they not become too rounded. I believe we had to think hard about that carefully with this remake. One thing I would like to ask before finishing, how did you come up with the name Reload? We originally wanted to add an R to the title. There was P5R as the definitive version of Persona 5, and we wanted to approach this project with the same enthusiastic mindset. It also evokes the aspect of a remake, but calling it Persona 3 Remake wouldn't feel quite as right for a Persona series title. As a fan of the series, I'd like to be surprised rather than have something be straightforward. That's right, recently RE, or Re, has been used a lot in games, but it's different when you consider it for Persona. The summoning devices, the evokers, in the shape of the gun, we thought about Reload. Using it as the title, it should be Reloaded grammatically, but that gives off more of a gun action feeling, so we settled on Reload. It took some time to finally decide on it, but it quickly became the chosen name within the development team. I'm imagining scenes where the protagonist and his allies reload their evokers to summon their personas, so finally give a message to the readers who are anticipating P3R and fans of the Persona series. Firstly, I would like to say thank you for waiting. It's a special project for us, and we have finally been able to realize this remake. Because of everyone continuing to voice their support, we will continue to deliver information in the lead up to release. So I hope that original players will be able to see what has changed and what hasn't. And those who hadn't heard of Persona 3 before can follow along as if it's a new game made from scratch. With this announcement, I think we've been able to show what Persona 3 would look like if P Studios made it today. We would like to show that it is a game that can be played today whether you are familiar with the original or not. It has been made with respect and care for the original version. The release is still some time away, but I hope that you'll continue looking forward to it. Every time we complete a game as developers, we feel somewhat uneasy, thinking maybe we could have done this better, or will everybody like this? We often approach the release with this sort of atmosphere. With P3R in mind, all the staff have been able to reach the final stages of development with the feeling that a good product has been made, which is rare. I think that this is a title that we can release with a lot of confidence. I want to release it to everyone as soon as possible. However, please wait a little longer. We are also looking forward to the day that we can share this excitement not only in Japan, but around the world with a global release. I'm looking forward to the future developments for this release. Thank you very much. But yeah, that was the article. I had fun reading it. It was pretty eye-opening, and sorry if my voiceover sounded a bit shaky at times or a little rough. I'm not used to reading that much perfectly. I make a lot of mistakes when I read out loud, so I had to do a lot of takes and read slower than most. But yeah, I hope that this was a fun thing to watch, and honestly, I have a lot of hope for the remake still, despite people having issues with things like the weird UI and stuff like that. People point out things like the blue circle UI looking worse than the revolver type button layout, which I partially do agree with. I do prefer the way original Persona 3's battle menu did, but I also want to point out that people don't often include the shot of the menu rolling out like a revolver barrel from the moon. That's a part of it that I feel makes the whole UI click a little bit more. But ultimately, I think that this remake will be good. It might have problems in some places, but from what I've seen from all the game footage, this remake looks like it's going to be amazing. Another thing I want to bring up, please stop criticizing me for criticizing a game company for removing content. I just want to throw that in. Removing content is never okay, but it can be acceptable if it's something like, oh, everybody hates the answer, let's remove the answer. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. I just wanted to bring up some...